team gives you a closer look at the events that happened around Maine this week.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us. I'm your host, Cindy Campbell. Today we're talking about staying safe in the summer, starting on the water. It's been a deadly week on Maine's waterways, so I chatted with Maine Game Warden Lieutenant Jason Luce about boating and swimming safety. So we're talking boating safety, which this year has kind of taken on a little extra as far as what you need to be careful of, because the water is really cold right now, isn't it?
The water is very cold. We've had a stretch of unusually hot weather. The air is very hot, but the water temperatures in a lot of the lakes are still, Sebago Lake, for instance, or Moosehead Lake, the surface temperature probably is barely 60 degrees, and that's pretty cold.
Yeah. And if you're in a boat and you go out to, say, the center of the lake and go swimming, it's going to be even colder out there.
Yeah. You know, obviously the further you get away from shore in the shallow water, the water temperatures increase, even in July. And the deeper the water is, and if the body of water is spring-fed or there's a current, you know, that plays a significant role in the temperature as well.
So let's start with the most obvious as far as boating safety and life jackets. It really doesn't do you any good if it's laying in the boat.
It doesn't. So, you know, state law requires that anybody 10 and under wear a life jacket. State law also mandates that if you're operating a personal watercraft or are being towed behind a boat on skis or a tube, that you be required to wear it. But the law requires that there be a wearable life jacket inside the vessel for everybody on board. And to your point, the life jacket doesn't do you any good if you're not wearing it. And a lot of times these incidents occur quickly, and everybody thinks that they're going to have time to put that life jacket on, you know, after the incident happens, and probably not going to be able to.
Yeah.
So they make a variety of life jackets ranging from very uncomfortable to very comfortable. And, you know, we as an agency mandate that all of our wardens wear a life jacket while they're on a boat. And we wear inflatable ones.
Right.
They're small, they're light, they're comfortable, and they work well.
Yeah, my husband and I fish, and we have a canoe. And I will admit, often didn't wear the life jackets because it's hard to fish in those things. So we got inflatable life jackets, and you don't even realize you're wearing it. You just kind of forget about it, and you have plenty of movement. I
oftentimes will get in my truck, and after I've been out on a boat, and look down and realize that I'm wearing my life jacket. So they are comfortable, you know, and they're practical. I mean, like you said, you can put it on and you don't notice it. They don't get in the way. You can still cast your fishing rod when you're fishing. You can move around. So, no, they work very well, and they cost a little more than the normal orange yoke life jackets that you see on a lot of boats, but they're comfortable.
Yeah,
now, having said that, those orange yoke style life jackets work the best. They're the most uncomfortable, but they work the best. You know, those ones will keep your head out of the water if you are unconscious. So, I mean, you know, you give up a little bit for comfort.
Right. So tying the last 2 points together, right now especially, if you go out of the boat, that cold water is going to incapacitate you quickly. So having a life vest to help you stay afloat, it could make a big difference.
It can make a huge difference. You know, with the water temperatures the way they are on a lot of bodies of water, hypothermia will set in very quickly. You know, within a matter of minutes. Even regardless of how good of a swimmer you think you are, within a matter of minutes, the hypothermia will set in, and you won't be able to use your arms and legs. Your appendages get cold, and, you know, basically you're unable to keep yourself above water.
Yeah. Okay. So let's get back in the boat. If you're driving a boat, always be aware of what's going on around you.
Yes. So be cognizant of your surroundings. Maine lakes and ponds are very rocky. So, you know, first and foremost, know where you're going. Even before you go, tell somebody where you're going, where you're going to be, and when you plan on returning, and be cognizant of your surroundings. You know, when we operate a motor vehicle, we have fog lines and center lines and yellow lines, and we know which direction we have to travel on. We have stop signs, and, you know, we have traffic control devices that tell us when we can go. We don't have those on the water. And so it's real important for you, first and foremost, just be cognizant of everything that's going on around you. You know, there could be somebody on a stand-up paddleboard out there. There could be somebody swimming, and just be super aware of your surroundings.
And as someone who is often out there in a canoe, be aware of where your wake is going. If you're going too fast and there's someone in a canoe and you're going to be sending out some heavy wakes, they're going to be tipping back and forth. So maybe slow down a little bit.
slow down a little bit. And I'm glad you brought up wakes because, as an operator of a boat, you're responsible for your wakes. And not only being responsible for your wakes when you're out in the middle of the lake, but keep in mind that the state of Maine has what's called a water safety zone. So anytime you're 200 feet or closer to shore, you have to operate your vessel at headway speed only.
Okay.
And headway speed means speed necessary to provide forward propulsion and maintain steerage. So there's no speed limit, just you have to be going super slow and be able to maintain your steerage and not create a wake.
Okay. All right. Before you leave, check the weather.
Yes, and on hot, humid days, thunderstorms can come up in a hurry, and the winds can change, creating unsafe conditions on the water. But yes, check the weather, be responsible for knowing where you're going, and when you see dark clouds coming across the sky, get to shore.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think it's also important to think about your own personal health. So, sunscreen and plenty of water to drink so that you are able to stay in control of that boat.
Excellent point. You're out in the sun all day. You become fatigued. There's glare on the water. So, keep all of those things in mind. Stay hydrated and wear your sunscreen. Maybe minimize the effects of the heat when you're out there on the water.
Okay. And leave the alcohol maybe for the shore after you get done?
Exactly. So the state of Maine, operating a boat is the same as operating a motor vehicle. If you're over 21 and you have a BAC, blood alcohol content, of 0.08 or greater, you're going to be arrested and taken to jail. And we have zero tolerance for that. If you're under 21, you can't have any alcohol in your system. So leave the alcohol at home. Leave the alcohol back at the camp. Wait until you're done recreating on the water. Also, we don't want you to drink when you get back to the boat launch. Wait until you get home and someplace safe and you're not going to have to operate any machinery.
Okay. Swimming behind a boat. I know I've talked to the state epidemiologist before, and it's something I never thought of. If you're going to go out in the middle of the lake and go swimming, maybe stay away from the back of the boat because you can be dealing with carbon monoxide at that point.
Carbon monoxide. And not even swimming behind the boat, but a lot of times people will ride behind the motor.
Right.
Or on the back of the boat. And nationwide, this has been a problem. People will be just kind of moving along slowly on the lake, and for no reason, somebody will fall off the back of the boat into the water and drown. And carbon monoxide has been linked to numerous boating-related deaths for a long time.
Yeah.
So be very cognizant, and don't ride back there. Don't ride on the bow of the boat for the simple reason that if you fall off the bow of the boat, the operator does not have time to react to disengage that motor before you get run over.
Yeah. Never assume that you're going to be able to handle the situation.
Never. And nobody thinks that something bad is going to happen, right?
Right.
What's the last thing when you go out on the boat? You probably had a week at work and you're getting a chance to go out and recreate and enjoy some of our beautiful bodies of water, enjoy the Maine outdoors, and nobody's thinking that something bad's going to happen. But it can happen in a split second. Things can change, and you probably aren't going to be prepared to react quick enough to avoid it.
Right. It has been happening a lot over the last week. Man, there have been a lot of swimming and boating fatalities over the last week, so something to keep in mind.
Yeah. Like we said earlier, the weather has been very hot. People want to go cool off, but the water temperature, it's still cold, and people tend to overestimate their abilities to swim.
Right.
And it's been my experience that when you're on the water, the distance to shore is a lot further than you think it is.
Yeah.
And when you're standing on a safe boat and there aren't any issues, 300 yards doesn't seem that far. But when you're in the water and you have to get yourself to shore, that's a long ways. So.
Yeah, maybe not as strong a swimmer, or like you said, with a really cold water, that's going to sap your strength as well really fast.
It certainly is. Yeah.
Okay. Jason, that's what I had. I assume more boating safety tips on the website?
Yep, check our website. There are lots of boating safety tips and a lot of boating etiquette advice. Again, be cognizant of the headway speed in your wake. Not only is it potentially unsafe to people, but your wakes, when you're 200 feet or closer to shore, can cause damage to the shoreline and private property. So, be responsible when you're out there, be courteous, and be safe.
All right. Is there anything I missed, Jason? Anything you'd like to add?
One thing that we recommend for people operating motorboats is that almost all outboard motors and recreational boats come equipped with an engine cutoff switch. And we recommend that people engage them. So they're usually on a tether cord, and the purpose of these engine cutoff switches is if the operator of the boat falls overboard, it'll cut the engine.
Okay.
we've seen it time and time again where the operator of a boat is on the boat by themselves, and they hit a wake, or for some reason they fall overboard, and then inevitably the boat will start to circle. And sometimes these incidents end up being fatal. And if they had simply attached that tether cord to a belt loop or to their life jacket when they fall off, that'll cut that engine and eliminate the risk of being run over by your own boat.
Okay, great advice.
So life jackets and engine cutoff switches, and don't overestimate your abilities to swim or operate a boat.
Find more boating safety tips and etiquette at mefishwildlife.com. Next, something Jason and I touched on is carbon monoxide poisoning. Here's an interview I did with Northern Light Health's Dr. Christopher Pezzullo, who had even more tips on avoiding CO poisoning in the summer. We're talking about carbon monoxide poisoning. I think a lot of people, when they think carbon monoxide poisoning, tend to think wintertime and generators, but it isn't just a wintertime issue, is it?
No, it certainly isn't. There do seem to be spikes during the year for carbon monoxide poisoning, and winter is the biggest spike, but certainly summer there is a secondary spike. You had mentioned generators, and I think that's still something that's important to think about. You know, people may be at camps where if they either don't have power or if they lose power, say after a thunderstorm, they may be utilizing a generator. And the big issue with generators is just making sure that they are outside. It's all about ventilation with carbon monoxide. So if you have it outside but it's near a home with a window open, remember that that exhaust can be coming right into the home. So you really want your generator to be at least 15 feet from windows and doors.
Right.
Other issues, though, that make summer of concern, certainly people will often at camps especially, or if they are literally camping, may use propane-powered stoves. So sometimes people will want to use them in enclosed areas. And again, you really want propane appliances to be in areas where there's great ventilation. And if it's an appliance which has a vent on it, make sure that the vent is not clogged.
Right. And in your camp, I would think having a CO detector would be important.
Absolutely. So CO detectors, especially having them near where people sleep, are very important. I didn't know if you knew, but new single-family homes and anything that is a seasonal rental, it's actually required by state law that there is a carbon monoxide detector.
Okay. All right.
We would like it to be in 100% of homes. Currently, about 65% of homes in Maine have carbon monoxide detectors.
Right. Now, off-roading is another area where you can run into problems with carbon monoxide, isn't it?
Well, certainly if you're off-roading and you get stuck and your exhaust gets blocked either by water or mud, that can certainly cause a backup of gases, including carbon monoxide, inside the vehicle. So again, making sure that there is enough ventilation. Another thing to think about, lots of people do small engine or auto repair in the summers, and they may do that with the garage door closed. And if the motors are running, again, you can be at risk for carbon monoxide poisoning in any enclosed place. The other thing to consider is boating.
Right.
So with boating, the area around the boat exhaust tends to have a higher amount of carbon monoxide than further away. And some people will, say drag onto the platform while the boat is running, and they'll have their face fairly near the exhaust, and they can become carbon monoxide poisoned just by being close to the engine running.
Wow. Being in the water and dealing with that, not a good combination.
Yes.
At all.
Yeah.
Cooking out. Say you're going to have a cookout and it starts to rain and you say, oh, it's okay, I can move the charcoal or whatever into the stove, into the garage. Not a good idea.
It's not a great idea. Certainly, again, make sure that if you're doing something like that you have, windows and doors open so that there's air moving through. You don't just want one opening, you want there to be air moving through, some ventilation.
Yeah. So that people know, what are some of the early warning signs? It's easy to miss that you're getting carbon monoxide poisoning, isn't it?
It can be. I mean, certainly people, will talk about drowsiness as one of the symptoms that you'll see, and that is true. But usually people will notice a feeling of lightheadedness or dizziness, weakness. They often feel a little nauseous or sick to their stomach. So there are signs, that something is happening. And again, it's really just about being aware if you're having some of these nondescript signs, but you are also, using a propane appliance, or that that you have a generator that's not well ventilated, try to put 2 and 2 together. Again, if you have a carbon monoxide detector, great. But remember that you can have these signs and symptoms before the carbon monoxide detector goes off. The goal of the carbon monoxide detector is to protect you from dying, but it isn't to protect you from getting any exposure to carbon monoxide. It goes off after a certain threshold, so you may already be developing symptoms when the detector goes off. The other thing I'd like to mention is that it's important to everyone, at least every year, maybe twice a year, to change batteries on carbon monoxide detectors if they're not hardwired. And the other thing I'd like to say is sometimes people will say, it's probably the battery, so I'm just going to take the battery out if the carbon monoxide detector is going off. Really, the thing to do is if the carbon monoxide detector goes off, go outside and then call, for assistance for the fire department to come and assess.
Right, and that's important. The first thing you do is get outside, away from the carbon monoxide. And if you're feeling ill, if you're feeling ill, maybe get some medical attention.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you realize, but there are over 100 emergency department visits a year in Maine for carbon monoxide poisoning. And unfortunately, there's, an average of 1 to 5 deaths a year in Maine from carbon monoxide poisoning.
Wow. So something you really want to pay attention to.
Yes, please, yeah.
Chris, that's what I had. Did we miss anything?
I think the only thing maybe to stress is that carbon monoxide is colorless and odorless. And so that confusion, that dizziness, weakness can occur without you knowing it. The reason I'm pointing that out is that a lot of times things like engines or propane appliances are giving off carbon monoxide, but those things do have a smell. People may smell propane. They may smell gas fumes. That's not carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide is colorless and odorless. So they don't know, they don't see it, and they don't smell it.
Find more information about carbon monoxide poisoning on the Maine Center for Disease Control and Prevention's website. I'm Cindy Campbell. Next Sunday, we're going to be talking with Alicia Milne about the Ronald McDonald House Charities, which provide a safe and comforting place for families to stay when their child is in the hospital. Alicia will tell us about a fundraiser they have coming up later this month that involves bidding on beautiful purses and how the proceeds will be used to make a difficult time a little less stressful. Enjoy the rest of your weekend and stay safe.
Join us again next weekend for Maine Concerns with your Town Square Media News team.